Shalom, I'm Trinity, and today I'll be reading from 2 Samuel chapter 16 through 18 in the TLV. Now when David had passed a little beyond the summit, there was Ziba the servant of Mephibosheth to meet him with a pair of saddled donkeys, and on them 200 loaves of bread, 100 clusters of raisins, 100 fig cakes, and a bottle of wine. So the king asked Ziba, "What are you doing with these?" Ziba said, "The donkeys are for the king's household to ride on. The bread and the figs are for the young men to eat, and the wine is for anyone who faints in the wilderness to drink." Then the king asked, "And where is your master's son?" "Well, he's staying in Jerusalem," Ziba said to the king, "for he said, 'Today the house of Israel will restore to me the kingdom of my father.'" Then the king said to Ziba, "Behold, all that belongs to Mephibosheth is yours." "I bow low," Ziba said. "Let me find favor in your eyes, my lord the king." When King David arrived at Bahurim, behold, just coming out from there was a man of the family of the house of Saul. His name was Shimei, son of Gera. As he came out, he kept on cursing and flinging stones at David and at all King David's servants, while all the people and all the mighty men were at his right hand and on his left. Thus Shimei said as he cursed, "Get out, get out! The man of bloodshed, the good-for-nothing. Adonai has returned on you all the blood of Saul's house, in whose place you've reigned. Adonai has handed the kingdom over to your son Absalom. So see, your own evil has overtaken you, because you are a man of bloodshed." Then Abishai, son of Zeruiah, said to the king, "Why let this dead dog curse my lord the king? Let me go over now and take off his head." But the king said, "What have I to do with you, sons of Zeruiah? If he curses, it's because Adonai has said to him, 'Curse David.' So who should say, 'Why did you do so?'" Then David said to Abishai and to all his officials, "Look, my son who came from my own body is seeking my life. How much more this Benjamite? Leave him alone and let him curse, since Adonai has told him. Perhaps Adonai will look on my affliction and return good to me for his cursing this day." So David and his men continued on the way, while Shimei kept walking alongside the hill parallel with him, cursing as he walked, casting stones at him and throwing dirt. Finally the king and all the people that were with him arrived weary, so he refreshed himself there. Meanwhile Absalom and all the people of the men of Israel arrived in Jerusalem. Ahithophel was with him. Now when David's friend Hushai the Archite came to Absalom, Hushai said to Absalom, "Long live the king! Long live the king!" But Absalom said to Hushai, "Is this your loyalty to your friend? Why did you not go with your friend?" "No," said Hushai to Absalom, "for the one whom Adonai has chosen, as well as these people, all the men of Israel, his I will be, and with him I will stay. Besides, whom should I serve? Shouldn't I be in the presence of his son? As I have served in your father's presence, so I will be in your presence." Then Absalom said to Ahithophel, "Give your counsel. What should we do?" So Ahithophel said to Absalom, "Go to your father's concubines whom he has left to take care of the palace. Then all Israel will hear that you have made yourself abhorrent to your father, and the hands of all who are with you will also be strengthened." So they pitched a tent for Absalom on the roof, and Absalom went to his father's concubines in the sight of all Israel. Now in those days the counsel that Ahithophel gave was like inquiring for the word of God. So was all of Ahithophel's counsel, both with David and with Absalom. Moreover, Ahithophel said to Absalom, "Let me now choose 12,000 men, and I will arise and pursue David tonight. I will attack him while he is weary and weak-handed, and terrify him, so that all the people that are with him will flee. Then I will strike down the king when he is alone. Then I will bring all the people back to you. When all will have returned, except the man you are seeking, then all the people will be at peace." Now the plan seemed right in the eyes of Absalom and all the elders of Israel. Then Absalom said, "Call now Hushai the Archite also. Let's hear what he has to say as well." When Hushai came to Absalom, Absalom spoke to him, saying, "This is what Ahithophel has advised. Should we follow his counsel? If not, you will speak." So Hushai said to Absalom, "This time the counsel that Ahithophel has given is not good." Hushai then added, "You know your father and his men. They are mighty men. and they are embittered in their souls like a bear robbed of her cubs in the wild. Your father is an expert in warfare and won't spend the night with the troops. Even now, he must be hiding in one of the caves or in some other place. So if he were to fall on them at first, whoever hears of it would say, 'There's a slaughter among the people following Absalom.' Then even one who is valiant, whose heart is like the heart of a lion, will utterly melt away. For all Israel knows that your father is a mighty warrior, and those who are with him are valiant men. Instead, I counsel that all Israel be gathered all together to you, from Dan to Beersheba, as abundant as the sand by the sea, and that you personally go into the battle. Then we will come upon him in one of the places where he can be found, and will fall upon him as dew falls on the ground. None will be left of all the men who are with him, not even one. Moreover, if he withdraws into a city, then all Israel will bring ropes to that city and drag it into the valley until not even one small stone will be found there." Then Absalom and all the men of Israel said, "The counsel of Hushai the Archite is better than the counsel of Ahithophel." For Adonai had ordained to thwart Ahithophel's good counsel, so that Adonai might bring evil upon Absalom. Then Hushai said to Zadok and Abiathar the Kohanim, "This and that is what Ahithophel counseled Absalom and the elders of Israel, and this and that is what I advised. Now therefore send word quickly and tell David, saying, 'Don't spend the night at the fords in the wilderness, but by all means cross over, or else the king and all the people with him may be swallowed up.'" Now Jonathan and Ahimaaz were staying at Enrogel, and a maidservant used to go and pass information along to them. Then they would go and inform King David, for they could not be seen entering the city. But Alad did see them, and informed Absalom. So the two of them left quickly, and arrived at the house of a man in Bahurim. He had a well in his courtyard, so they went down into it. Then the woman took the cover and spread it over the well's mouth, and scattered grain on top of it, so that nothing was noticeable. When Absalom's servants came to the woman at the house and said, "Where are Ahimaaz and Jonathan?" the woman said to them, "They crossed over the brook of water." When they had searched and could not find them, they returned to Jerusalem. After they had departed, they came up from the well, then went and informed King David, telling David, "Get up and cross over the water immediately, for thus has Ahithophel counseled against you." Then David arose, and all the people who were with him, and they crossed over the Jordan. By morning light, not even one of them was left who had not crossed the Jordan. Now when Ahithophel saw that his counsel was not followed, he saddled his donkey, arose, went to his home in his hometown, set his house in order, and hanged himself. So he died and was buried in his father's tomb. David had reached Mahanaim by the time Absalom crossed the Jordan, he and all the men of Israel with him. Now Absalom had set Amasa over the army instead of Joab. Now Amasa was son of a man whose name was Ithra the Israelite, who had gone to Abigail, daughter of Nahash, sister to Zeruiah, Joab's mother. Israel and Absalom camped in the land of Gilead. Now when David reached Mahanaim, Shobi son of Nahash of Rabbah of the children of Ammon, Mahir son of Amiel of Lodabar, and Barzillai the Gileadite of Rogelim brought beds, basins, clay pots, wheat, barley, flour, roasted grain, beans, lentils, parched seeds, honey, curd, sheep, and cheese from the herd for David and for the people who were with him to eat. For they said, "The people must be hungry, weary, and thirsty in the wilderness." Then David mustered the people who were with him, and set commanders of thousands and captains of hundreds over them. Then David sent out the troops, 1/3 under the command of Joab, 1/3 under the command of Joab's brother Abishai son of Zeruiah, and 1/3 under the command of Ittai the Gittite. The king said to the troops, "I must certainly go out with you also." But the troops said, "You must not go out, for if we were to flee, they would not care about us. Even if half of us die, they still wouldn't care about us. But you are worth 10,000 of us. Therefore now, it is better that you be ready to support us from the city." Then the king said to them, "Whatever seems best to you, I will do." So the king stood beside the gate, and all the troops went out by their hundreds and thousands. Then the king charged Joab, Abishai, and Ittai, saying, "Deal gently with the young man Absalom for my sake." Now all the troops heard the king's charge to all the commanders concerning Absalom. Then the troops went out to the field to confront Israel, but the battle took place in the forest of Ephraim. The people of Israel were defeated there before the followers of David, and the slaughter that day was great, 20,000 men. For the battle there was spread over the face of the entire countryside, and the forest devoured more people that day than the sword devoured. Now Absalom encountered some of David's servants. When Absalom was riding on his mule, the mule went under the thick branches of the great oak, and his head got caught in the oak, so that he was left hanging between heaven and earth, while the mule that was under him went on. Then a certain man saw it and told Joab, saying, "Look, I saw Absalom hanging in an oak." Then Joab said to his informant, "Look, here, you saw him, so why didn't you strike him there to the ground? I would have given you 10 pieces of silver and a belt." But the man said to Joab, "Even if I had 1,000 pieces of silver in my hand, I would not raise my hand against the king's son. For in our hearing the king charged you, Abishai and Ittai, saying, 'Watch over the young man Absalom for me.' Otherwise, I would have betrayed his soul, and nothing stays hidden from the king, and you yourself would have stood aloof." "I won't wait for you," Joab said. So he took 3 darts in his hand and thrust them through Absalom's heart while he was yet alive in the midst of the oak. Then 10 young men, who were Joab's armor-bearers, surrounded Absalom, struck and finished him off. And Joab blew the shofar, and the troops returned from pursuing Israel, for Joab held back the troops. They took Absalom and threw him into a deep pit in the forest and piled over him a very large heap of stones. Then all Israel fled, everyone to his tent. Now Absalom, in his lifetime, had taken and set up for himself a pillar, which is in the king's valley, for he said, "I have no son to preserve the memory of my name." So he called the pillar by his name, and it has been called Absalom's monument to this day. Then Ahimaaz, son of Zadok, said, "Let me now run and bring the king news that Adonai has vindicated him against the hand of his enemies." But Joab said to him, "You are not to be the bearer of news today. You may do it another day, but today you shall bear no news, for the king's son is dead." Then Joab said to the Cushite, "Go tell the king what you have seen." So the Cushite bowed to Joab and took off running. But Ahimaaz, son of Zadok, once again said to Joab, "Whatever happens, please let me also run after the Cushite." "Why should you run, my son?" Joab said, "since you would have no news worth telling." "Whatever may come of it, I want to run." So he said to him, "Run." Ahimaaz ran by the way of the plain and so passed the Cushites. Now David was sitting between the 2 gates. When the watchman on the roof over the gate walked over to the wall, he lifted up his eyes and looked, and all of a sudden he saw a man running alone. The watchman cried out and told the king. The king said, "If he is alone, there is good news in his mouth." So he came closer and closer. Then the watchman saw another man running. So the watchman called out to the gatekeeper and said, "Look, another man is running alone." The king said, "He too is bringing good news." Then the watchman said, "I can see that the running of the first one is like the running of Ahimaaz, son of Zadok." "This is a good man, and he comes with good news," the king replied. Then Ahimaaz called out and said to the king, "Shalom." Then he prostrated himself before the king with his face to the ground and said, "Blessed be Adonai your God, who has given over the men who lifted up their hand against my lord the king." Then the king asked, "Is it well with the young man Absalom?" Ahimaaz answered, "I saw great tumult when the king's servant Joab sent me, your servant, but I did not know what it was about." "Step aside and stand here," the king said. So he stepped aside and stood still. Then the Cushite arrived and said, "Let my lord the king receive good news, for Adonai has vindicated you today against all who rose up against you." Then the king asked the Cushite, "Is it well with the young man Absalom?" The Cushite answered, "Let the enemies of my lord the king and all who rise up against you for evil be as that young man."